WTIM.
Welcome in to WTIM, your information station. My name is Tim Zalabak, the host of the WTIM Morning Show. Thanks so much to the sponsors that make the morning show possible: People's Bank and Trust, where they put people first, and Landmark of Taylorville, where you always do better at Landmark. On the phone line now, we have Illinois State Senator Steve McClure representing the 54th District. How are you today, Senator? Senator, I'm so sorry. You did not hear us throughout our entire intro right there, but I led you in perfectly, and I let your title be known there. How are you today, Senator Steve McClure?
I'm doing well, Tim. Good to be with you.
Really good to have you here today, and especially right after last night's primary. We got some things to dig into right there, so that's what we'll get started with. There's so many contested races throughout the southern districts down here, but what were your initial thoughts here about the March primary?
Well, my initial thoughts were that we had some ugly races, and we had some very close races, actually, throughout my 10 counties I represent. But everybody needs to now come together after the primary, and hopefully, wounds can heal, and people can work together, because we got to move forward now. And everybody that won, I congratulate them, and hopefully those that lost can work together with those that won, and we can all work together to make the state a better place and make the country a better place, because primaries can get very, very ugly. And certainly in my district, we had the Mike Boss, Darren Bailey primary, and that got very ugly. And I know there were hurt feelings on both sides. So again, I hope everybody can start working together now. And I congratulate, of course, Congressman Boss. And I congratulate also, by the way, in half of my district, Representative Brad Halberg had a primary, and he won his primary as well. So I congratulate both Brad and Mike. And now I hope everybody can come together and we can work together for the benefit of the people of Illinois.
Wow, yeah, that seems to be the focus now. You got to forget about that primary that happened, but you got to take what came out of them, of course. You mentioned these ugly races. Now, does that mean they were close races, or the focuses around those races, there was just some disputes? What does that mean?
A lot of negative tactics were used. And in the Mike Boss, Darren Bailey primary, Darren Bailey went negative on Mike Boss very hard on television. And, that does happen during campaigns. But again, we've got to now all hopefully work together and try to do what we can to help our constituents.
Sure. Is that something you often see after these primaries, is that people have a hard time getting back into creating legislation and working together? You see people kind of dwelling on that past?
Well, I've certainly seen that in the past, where people do dwell on, well, who was supporting me, who was against me. And, the Republican Party has to be united for us to be successful. And, for Congressman Boss to be able to do his job, he needs to have people helping him and not trying to attack him all the time, that sort of thing. So let's just hope that everybody comes together. And certainly we've seen it at the national level. Primaries in some cases have cost nominees of both parties their elections at the end of the day, because sometimes people get so beat up in primaries and the party does not come together at the end of the day, and then the opposing party wins. So primaries can be really nasty and ugly, but I do think that usually we come together as a party after the primary. So let's hope that happens this time.
Sure. And as we were covering some election results last night, voter turnout seemed low. And as I'm looking at these numbers with a critical framework for the first time, really, it is kind of alarming to see the amount of registered voters and then the amount that actually turned out to vote. Can you speak on this a little bit?
Yes, I think that's largely because the presidential races, both in the Republican field and the Democrat field, are wrapped up. I mean, President Trump has won the Republican nomination. President Biden has won the Democratic nomination. So that's really the driving force in these election years, presidential election years, where people want to show up to vote. With that being wrapped up for both sides of the aisle, it wasn't all that surprising that the turnout was low. But I wish that everybody felt the civic duty that they should feel, which should cause them to go vote. We're so blessed to be in this country where we can have these elections, where we can actually participate as citizens. Some countries their citizens can't participate in elections. So we shouldn't take that for granted. It was really a shame to see just how low the turnout was. But again, when the presidential race is wrapped up in the primaries already, it's kind of tough to get people to come vote, which is unfortunate.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. We were seeing in some counties for, county board positions, maybe a total of 75 people showed out and voted for that. And that's 75 people representing, over, 10,000 people in some areas, of course. So what does that mean to you? And in terms of your future goals and trying to get a new audience of voters out there, is that on your mind yet? Or are you just really thinking legislation stuff?
Well, we're always thinking about what's happening politically, because unless we get, obviously I'm a Republican, so unless we get more Republicans in office, it's going to be hard for us to try to get our agenda passed, in the state of Illinois. So I do think of the election results, particularly statewide, because, our downstate counties have been losing population. And we've also had in the last statewide election, very low turnout. And so I'm always watching these trends to see sort of where we're going. And, another election, another primary election where there's low turnout, it does not, necessarily speak well as to what's going to happen in the general election. But, downstate, if we show up to vote, we can win statewide offices. And if you look at the last statewide race, like I said, Cook County had a very low turnout, but so did downstate. It used to be downstate was really heavily turning out in elections. Now that's kind of, not been the trend lately. But in this next statewide election, and in this next election, obviously in November, where the president's going to be decided, it would sure be nice to have a higher turnout than Cook County. If we can do that, I think a lot of Republicans are going to believe that we can win statewide again. But until we can start picking up these numbers downstate, it's going to be very tough. So I'm watching it very closely, and let's just hope that, we get a higher turnout in the actual November election. And obviously we're going to get a higher turnout. I just don't know by how much.
Right. And you did explain to us that this was largely because the presidential races were just about wrapped up. But can you attribute the lower turnouts that have moved downstate? Can you attribute that to anything?
No, I mean, I went into the ballot box yesterday, and there were like no contested races by vote.
Right.
So I think for a lot of people, there weren't very many contested races, or in my case, there was like no contested races. So that certainly contributed to it as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And we were just talking right now about the March primary that happened last night with Illinois State Senator Steve McClure of the 54th District. Any final thoughts to wrap up our conversation here on the primary?
No, I just, again, encourage everybody to vote, and I hope everybody can come together after the primary.
Yeah, absolutely. And great words right there. You have some bills moving through the Senate right now in progress. Let's talk a little bit about these, Senator McClure. What's the first one you want to talk about here to wrap up our first segment?
Well, the first one is a bill that we're going to see again in committee because it passed committee, but I filed an amendment because I wanted to make sure the language was just right.
Cool.
And it involves a student of mine in the district who had made allegations of sexual assault against a parent. DCFS then moved that student out of that parent's house into the other parent's house. But unfortunately for them, that was in a different school district. So you have a student who didn't just have horrific sexual abuse happen to them, they also now lose all of their friends and their teachers and all the people that they know. And so I've got a bill that says that in a situation like that, that student can continue going to the same school district that they were enrolled in, because you shouldn't punish students for coming forward with abuse or neglect allegations. And so that bill passed unanimously out of committee already. Like I said, want to make sure the language was exactly what it needed to be. So we're going to come back into committee this week and hopefully get it passed out, and then it'll be on the floor to vote, and then it'll go to the House. So that's a bill that will make a difference in the lives of children that are being abused.
Wow. I mean, there's a lot to unpack right there, and you're really just looking out for a single constituent right here, which could be relayed into different situations moving forward here. What an unbelievable situation that you're looking to help out with right there. And that piece of legislation, you said it's heading back to the committee because you got to have that wording perfect.
That's exactly right.
Wow. Okay. I want to talk a little bit more about that bill and some more that you got working through the Senate right now. We're speaking with Illinois State Senator Steve McClure, representing the 54th District. And when we come back, we will have more from Senator McClure. My name is Tim Zalabak, your host of the WTIM Morning Show. Don't go anywhere. We will be right back.
Your information station, WTIM.
This Miller Media Group radio station and our online daily newspaper, TaylorvilleDailyNews.com, have got winter weather covered. With our exclusive event delay software, closings and cancellations are posted instantly when received, 24/7, and also air every 10 minutes during applicable times. And find out the latest road conditions at the road conditions icon on TaylorvilleDailyNews.com. Whether online or on air, we've got you covered.
The Shelby County Economic Development Corporation aims to foster, promote, and stimulate economic development, from keeping existing industry and retail businesses successful and thriving to attracting new investment in Shelby County. The Shelby County Economic Development Corporation is here to help your business grow. It also sponsors job fairs to fill positions at existing employers and encourages future entrepreneurs in the Shelby County CEO program. Find out more on the Shelby County Economic Development Corporation by clicking their icon at TaylorvilleDailyNews.com.
I'm Will Perkins, President and CEO of the Taylorville Community Credit Union. TCCU is proud to be the exclusive sponsor of the Miller Media Group Community Spotlight, allowing a different nonprofit organization to be highlighted on WTIM, WMKR, and WRAN each month.
Hey, what has 7,000 square feet, hundreds of items that are over 100 years old, and over 700 framed pictures on its walls and free admission? Why, the Christian County Coal Mine Museum, that's what. This is Chuck Martin, Executive Director, inviting you to come see what our museum has to offer. Our address is 1324 East Park Street in Taylorville, and our hours are Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Fridays from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. or by appointment at 217-526-4408.
This is Cammie Payne, General Manager of the Miller Media Group. We, along with TCCU, are proud to bring you the Community Spotlight each month.
TCCU is proud to be the exclusive sponsor of the Miller Media Group Community Spotlight. Come join us. You'll wonder why you waited. Member NCUA.
Brian Barnhart here, the voice of the Fighting Illini, inviting Illini Nation to listen for Fighting Illini sports this season on New Country 104.1. From every kickoff during football season to the closing horn of every basketball game, you'll hear them in Christian County and surrounding area on your home for Fighting Illini sports, New Country 104.1. Follow the orange and blue and go Illini.
Brought to you by Prairie Farms Dairy, Bob Ridings of Pana and Adam Jeffrey with Craig's Realtors in Taylorville.
Craig's Realtors continues to be the market leader in 2023. I'm Steve Craigs. It's a seller's market. If you're considering selling, click on our icon at TaylorvilleDailyNews.com.
Find out about all the products and services offered by Dan Rizzo, your American Family Insurance agent in Taylorville, by clicking their icon at TaylorvilleDailyNews.com.
Your information station, WTIM.
Welcome back to WTIM, your information station. My name is Tim Zalabak, your host of the WTIM Morning Show. Before we continue with another great conversation, thanks so much to the sponsors that make it possible. People's Bank and Trust, where they put people first. And Landmark of Taylorville, where you always do better at Landmark. On the phone line, we are speaking with Illinois State Senator Steve McClure, representing the 54th District. We thank him for taking the time today, especially after a busy March primary last night. We ran through those winnings and all the processes there. We're talking about some bills that Senator McClure has moving through the Senate, and we were wrapping up our conversation on the first bill of a student in your district that was being sexually assaulted at home. Upon moving to the other parent's home, they had to move school districts, and that just added even more problems to the situation. Is that sounding correct, Senator McClure?
Yeah, that's correct. And, it's a good bill, and I'm getting lots of bipartisan support. I look forward to seeing it again in committee this week and passing it out of committee again and moving it to the floor of the Senate.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's really great to hear that both sides of the aisle coming together in support of that. It's not tough to get behind that one there. What else do you want to talk about? You got a couple of more. You said you got the most bills right now working through their processes. Talk to me about the next one.
So another one that we are moving through at this moment is I had a constituent come to me because they were going to inherit property.
Okay.
But the family member whose property it was was behind in property taxes, and they had passed away. And even though they had passed away, the penalties were still accruing every single day and adding up more and more property taxes, literally against a dead person. And so the bill that I've got that's passed committee now and is awaiting floor action, which we'll vote on, sometime in the next couple of weeks, says that in a situation like that, if a person's behind in property taxes and then passes away, those penalties are paused until after the estate is settled or the property is sold or it changes hands. And so that seemed to make sense, because how can you continue charging a dead person property taxes,
Right.
which is essentially what they were doing. So that's a good bill that's going to cause some people that are inheriting property to pay a little less in property taxes. And, why should a family who is dealing with the loss of a loved one have to worry about, we got to settle this right now because each day there's another penalty and we can't pay it, So in the situation of my constituent, the property taxes became so great because of the penalties that they couldn't pay it.
Wow.
And so they had concerns there. So that's another bipartisan piece of legislation, and I'm proud to have filed that. And again, just like the last bill, Tim, these are all because constituents have come into my office at one of my office locations and talked about a problem that they've had. And so I've luckily been able to file legislation to address these problems.
Absolutely. You took the words out of my mouth right there. I was going to say yet another instance where a single constituent came to you with a problem, and you see how this can be more widespread, and then you put in action to put in that piece of legislation. That's pretty dang cool. So the penalties are stopped once this has been known, once the person is dead, but the tax won't go away. It'll still have to be paid at some point.
Yeah, the tax that the person owed when they died would just be paused. So
Okay.
it would just be that amount of money. The penalties for each additional day after the person's death are no longer going to be enacted. Now, the only minor thing that the person has to do that's inheriting this property, they've got to file a request for this to happen with the county treasurer of whatever county that they preside in. So you have to, apply and let the county treasurer know of the circumstances in your particular case, and then they would then approve it if you meet their requirements, which are laid out in the piece of legislation. So that's because you always have to have safeguards in place, and so we also wanted to make sure to have safeguards in place as part of the legislation.
Sure. I wouldn't even call that a downfall of the legislation. You got to fill out an application, make sure it's all for the right pieces, and if you have the right situation, you will be covered. That's a great bill right there. Senator McClure, we got 2 minutes left. You got time for to work in one more piece of legislation here with us?
Sure.
Awesome.
Another bill that we're going to have a little bit of a tweaking in committee this week that's already passed committee was that I have a constituent in the district who was observing the Department of Transportation spraying pesticides. Now, this was right near a right-of-way, but they were spraying pesticides all over the street and all over the sides, and it was actually right up into people's houses. It was going like splashing into swimming pools.
Whoa.
Splashing on kids, believe it or not, that were playing in the yard, and splashing off houses. It was just going everywhere. So the guy stops IDOT and says, "Hey, what are you guys spraying?" And they said, "We can't tell you." And so he then tries to call IDOT the next day to say, "Hey, what were you guys spraying all over my yard and my neighbor's yards and like all over the swimming pools and stuff?" And they said, "Well, we can't tell you that." And so they got a hold of my office. And so we called IDOT and we got a list of what was sprayed. It was like a 30 pesticide cocktail that would even kill trees, according to IDOT. And so this stuff should not be anywhere near anybody, let alone kids and swimming pools. And this constituent also said they had 2 dogs. Both died at 4 years old.
Oh my God.
Of cancer. And they were concerned about, was this horrible pesticide cocktail, did it have any effect on killing these dogs? So anyway, because of that, the other bill I filed, that's another one of the bills I filed, is a bill that says that a local government or the state that is going to spray pesticides within 200 feet of somebody's house, they've got to give notification in at least 24 hours in advance that they're going to be spraying. They've got to provide a list of the chemicals that are going to be part of the spray and why they're spraying those things, and then provide a number where if there are issues with the spraying itself, the person can call to complain. So
all righty,
that's
Senator
the
McClure,
intent.
I'm so glad you worked in the bill right there. We are out of time, but thank you for explaining that one to us. And that's another big one, Senator McClure. Thank you so much for taking the time today.
Thank you very much.
Absolutely. That was Senator McClure representing the Illinois 54th District. I'm Tim Zalabak, your host of the WTIM Morning Show. Thank you all for listening.
Now, Big 870 WTIM Assumption Taylorville, 96.1 W241 CF Taylorville, 107.5 W298 CD Shelbyville, 107.9 W300 EH Payne and Nokomis.
Agreeing on 15, and I'm thinking in terms of that. He also expressed reluctance on a federal ban, saying experts agree it's a state's issue and shouldn't be a federal issue. I'm Jennifer King.
President Biden's catastrophic and ultimately deadly U.S. withdrawal from Afghanistan was